Perfect. Okay, so first of all, thanks a lot, Cliff, for inviting me to this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here today, and also my apologies because of the last minute change on Monday. It was out of my control, but anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. So I'm very happy to participate in this webinar. Yeah, so today I'm gonna talk about city science or urban science at the service of urban planning and urban design. That is not exactly the same, but we are basically trying to put, so to speak, some science behind what we do, behind our design, okay, in terms of urban planning and architecture as well. And to do that, I'm going to explain also 3 case studies that we've been working on in our projects during this year. But first of all, I'm going to try and explain a little bit what we do, who we are, and so on. So first of all, who we are and what we do. You introduced myself really well, but I'm just going to go very quickly. I am an architect and urban designer, a professor and a researcher, and currently I'm based in Barcelona. I've been working and living in the past 10 years in 6 different cities in 3 different countries, highlighting, of course, my years in London, 4 years in London, where I was working in Foster and Partners. Now I'm the head of urban analytics and design at OUA Group in Barcelona. OUA stands for Office of Urbanism and Architecture, okay? And I am a professor at the European University of Catalonia, and also an associate professor, and also I am a BREEAM urbanism assessor. BREEAM is a sustainability certification for well, urban planning projects, for architectural projects, and so on. In my case, BREEAM urbanism is for urban projects. Well, we are covering, or in my case, I'm covering all the different disciplines within the urbanism profession, which is master planning, tabula rasa, greenfield, and also regeneration, that is brownfield, public urban design, and also a number of different consulting services in urbanism, such as benchmarking, context analysis, spatial analysis, environmental analysis, people movement, and so on. Okay, very quickly. What we do at our company, well, we are among the top 3 companies in Catalonia and also in Spain that integrate architecture, urban planning, and engineering as an integrated service, I mean. And we are right now more than 100 people. This map is a little bit outdated. We've got, well, our headquarters is in Barcelona, as you well said earlier, but we've got offices also in Madrid and a small one in London, and we are expanding abroad, both in terms of offices and projects, okay? And I was saying, as integrating design practice within the group, we are covering different areas within the built environment sector, like urban analytics and design, that is my team, my area, where we are doing the previous phase of urban planning, so master planning, and then we've got a team specialized in local urban planning, also architecture and singular architecture, both residential, hotels, and so on, and also architecture more like with a public vocation, let's say, engineering, and so on. So we've got, again, an integrated design team. This is the important thing to highlight. And also we've got expertise in Catalonia, but in my case, and another partner that recently joined has also a lot of international experience. Together, we combine the leadership in Catalonia with our international experience, and that's why we are expanding or trying to expand our services abroad. So our motto is architecture, urbanism, and lots of analysis. Why, or what do I mean with that? Basically, what I want to say is that we are trying to give more importance to the journey than actually to the final output or to the final proposal. So basically, we analyze and study all urban-related issues or affairs to give importance to this journey and not only to the final proposal. So basically, we inform our planning, we inform architectural design, we inform or we try to make evident what is not evident at a glance or to simple sight with the naked eye, okay? And we try to understand through this analysis why things happen, analyzing where they happen, okay? So that we can reveal patterns and singularities and so on and make better decisions. This is why we say we don't do, let's say, conventional architecture or urbanism. We do lots of analysis. Sometimes we don't speak about that, only about the final proposal, but it's important to give importance to this, okay, to this analysis. Well, this is a small pause in the presentation, but everything started with Jon Snow, not this guy, who was great. He rides dragons and whatever. It's great, but I mean this sir. This sir, Jon Snow, well, he's basically the father of modern epidemiology, and also he's famous because he discovered, as most of you will know, that the transmission of cholera was through water and not through air. Okay. In our field, let's say that it's important to highlight that, well, he was the promoter, one of the promoters of the scientific method in medicine, but also in our case, we can apply that in urban planning, design, and architecture. He was the pioneer of the creation of maps for the analysis and to understand, again, what is not visible at a glance, okay, with the naked eye. So this, in our sector, basically, I'm pretty sure that most of you know this map, is very famous. I'm going to zoom in the Soho. This is in London. This is the Cholera Map in 1854 that made him famous. And basically, he was, for the first time, he was, or someone, in this case, Jon Snow, was counting the deaths of the people because of cholera. And he was locating these deaths so that he revealed the pattern that, well, of course, this is in a nutshell, this is very summarized. There were a lot of years studying this and working on this, but he did this map basically to make the point that most of the deaths were surrounding the Pumping Broad Street in Soho. So he could demonstrate that actually cholera was, the transmission was through the water and not through the air. So applied to our sector, I'm coming back to the presentation. This is where everything started, and this is what we do today, in this case, to make planning decisions or design decisions, okay? We work through, let's say, 3 pillars, okay? Sustainability, transversality, and communication. I'm gonna go very quickly through this, but as I was saying, I am a BRIAM assessor. We've got key knowledge of the urban agendas, both local and global agenda, the 2030 agenda, and we use the indicators and so on to design. But in short, sustainability, we used it as part of the process, of the design process. It's not an output, it's part of our design process, it's inherent to it, okay? Transversality, because we work in different scales, typologies, and so on, and I'm not gonna spend more time on that, but this one, communication, is very important. And I'm going to explain this because we try, I'm not concerned about doing beautiful maps. I like it, of course, I love it. But our intention actually is to try and communicate our ideas with a strong visual impact, basically, or in short, to try and communicate complex things in a very simple way. That's the thing. Of course, if it's attractive, the map is attractive and it's beautiful, whatever, it's great. But my obsession is to communicate our design ideas or our analysis, to try and communicate in a very simple way, an attractive way, because we want people, everybody, not only people with expertise in urbanism or architecture. We are trying to make our ideas understandable for a wide audience, because architecture and urban planning is I consider them as public service because it's affecting everybody. So we try to be transparent and communicate our ideas in the best way possible. So that's why I'm paying lots of attention to communication. Okay. And well, we are looking at the city as an ecosystem, as an ecosystem basically to understand the different associations between different variables. Okay, again, things that normally are not connected or is not evident that they are connected, so we're trying to make them visible. Okay, so this is basically having an integrated approach to solve or to design, okay, to solve any urban issue or to design any project. So different layers of the city, the built environment, so we can look at the city, for example, through its networks or through its morphology, the building space, the empty space, what is behind the buildings. In this case, if I remember well, this is the age of the buildings from cadastral data, so we can see the evolution. If we zoom out a little bit more, we can see the evolution of Barcelona in this case through the age of the buildings, and this is what we try to analyze and to study to design our projects. Okay. To do that, well, we design basically using a spatial multi-criteria analysis as a process, let's say. That this is using different data as an input, locating this, we locate this, this input, this data, normal geographical data, otherwise we need to find the geographic variable, or we need to locate it. But basically, we use geographical data, different type of data, to get an output that could be a decision, that could be a conclusion about something, or that could be even a design decision in the end of the day. Okay, here in the right-hand side, we can see which normally the layers we are normally using in every project. Okay, a base map, the aerial image, the land cover of the land uses, some demographics, topography, and so on. Of course, the land use or zoning, the parcels, the buildings, and so on. Okay, but basically here what we do is overlapping different layers, of course, work with them. Not the important thing here is to extract information from the relationship between different layers. Okay, and through that we can take different decisions. In short, what we are trying to do is to know what happens and to know, or well, see, yes, what happens, and to know that we need to know where things happen. Okay, and of course, through that we can understand also why they happen and make again better decisions. Okay. So different layers, as I was mentioning earlier, for example, networks or the structure of a city. In this case, yeah, as an urbanist, sometimes, or quite often actually, I like to step back and look at the city from a broader scale or perspective. Okay, and in this case, we are seeing the road hierarchy of Barcelona. Okay, and we could make this analogy of the vascular system in humans, right? The arteries and the veins. The arteries will be the main roads of Barcelona. The diagonal you can see it here. When you are within the city, there are smaller streets, smaller roads that could be the veins, let's say, right? So basically, we can classify the streets according to their hierarchy, connectivity, accessibility, or other variables, and this can reveal a glimpse of its urban DNA. Of course, not the complete urban DNA, because we should look at other variables such as, I don't know, morphology, as I was saying, or demography, or economy, socioeconomic variables or factors. But only with the network we can identify, and actually in the case of Barcelona, for example, like happens also with Manhattan, for example, we can identify quite quickly that we are talking about this city, right? And this is part of partially the urban DNA. Also, another layer is the morphology. Morphology is not only the built space, but also the empty space, or the space between buildings. Sorry, is where normally I'm more interested in this in the empty space than in the buildings themselves. Okay. Also, the social might be the relationship between people, the things that occur in the public space. Okay, as well, we locate what people is doing, where they are doing it, which relationship between other behaviors they have. This is as described by other remarkable people in the past century, for example, Jim Jacobs or Donald Appleyard, or more presently younger. Okay, basically we try also to look at that. And can be defined also the city, another layer, by flows, for example, which often are enough or even better to define the world. I'm going to go back later on, okay, at the end of this presentation to this image, but yes, one other layer could be the flows or could be the different networks, okay. Let's start with the case studies. There are 3 of them. The first one is route identification through apps. In this case, such as Wikiloc or Strava. I'm going to show a case with case study with Wikiloc. We use this process, what I'm going to explain here, quite a lot in our projects. Basically, where Wikiloc is a website where people using GPS device can upload the routes, okay? And if it's a route in a bicycle, in a motorbike, in a car, or walking or running or wherever. So normally what I do is to download the routes that this is publicly open, okay, open data. And we can download the routes in GPX format, the GPS exchange format, and we can obtain a lot of different points for each route, okay. I normally classify them in 3 types, hiking, running, and biking. And we've got, or we get something like this, okay. These points, this is one route, one single route, and these points, from these points, we create the route with a line, okay. The thing is that when we've got a lot of different routes, and we put them together with these 3 classes or other classes, I said 3, hiking, running, and cycling, because are the ones that we normally use in our projects, and I'm going to show now an example. We could either merge all these routes close to each other within a given tolerance, because normally if you are not going to get exactly the same route, but if you've got, I don't know, 2 lines that are 2 meters between each other, normally it's the same pathway, right? Normally it's people walking, this tolerance is you need to give this tolerance to get the same route. Or you can use symbolization just to get a map like this one, okay. In here, what I do is using this sort of, firefly or glowing style, we can get all the routes on top of each other. And the thicker the line is, the more number of routes converge in the same pathway, okay? So this is important, first of all, because on this example, I mean, it's very, very important, first of all, because we can see very quickly how people move, how actually people move, people behavior, in this case, in a natural park, okay? This is the site of our project, and we can see that most of the routes are converging here. So this is a awful small road, but people are using this road a lot to go into the natural park, to different directions, but using this road. So this is very important because this allows us to make a strong decision, actually. This is a strong point, because in our case, in here, okay, sorry, I'm pointing in the other screen. In here, this is the road I was speaking about. In here, there is actually a stream or a creek coming down the mountain up until here. Here, this stream is buried under the road in here, and it's nothing. There is no, and it comes to the sea in here in this point. But this is nothing. This is an awful road. So when we saw that people use this road a lot in different classes, as I said, in running, cycling, walking, or wherever, to go into the natural park, we said, hey, we should recover this creek in here and turn this into a public recreation space, a new public recreation space. At the same time, we are recovering a creek that is buried under the road. So, of course, with this, this was a strong point, and thanks to this kind of analysis, we could combine very quickly to our client, to the public office, public administration, and everybody who to whom we explain this story, because actually with this analysis it was very easy to demonstrate that makes sense, and actually is better to recover this stream in here. If we add, this is not only for natural areas, also in the city, we can see how people move, again, people behavior, adding other layers, in this case, for example, green areas, public facilities, the river, and so on. We can see, again, this is not a strictly a strict network analysis in terms of routing. This is actually people behavior, how people move. We are representing here more desired lines than actually the shortest path, for example, because we are showing how people move in the city, and we also we can add other layers of information. In this case, we were interested on seeing where the public green areas and public facilities were, and also how people were moving in different modes. As I said, walking, cycling, and well, in this case, running as well. Okay, so this is one of the analysis or studies we carry out more often not in most, but in some of our projects. A second case study is an index to estimate the urban greenery, the perceived urban greenness. I'm going to explain that. Normally, in urban planning, we use a lot of different indicators and different standards, but normally they are static calculations or static numbers. Okay, for example, in terms of green, of the amount of green in a city, in this case is the entire region of Catalonia. Normally we calculate the ratio is the square meters of green area, of public green area, by inhabitants, for example. Okay, and as we can see here in this table, this is what is planned, can be approved, and sometimes is real, sometimes it's not. Actually, I would say that it's not often really precise, right? So what I'm trying to say is that I am more interested in the reality than in this kind of indicators that are static, as I was saying. So as we know, urban greenness the urban green is very important to mitigate the heat island effect and to fight climate crisis. And we try basically, among other, also with other factors, other elements such as mobility and the morphology of the cities and so on. But with the urban green elements, is one of the most used. How can I say, the most used elements to cool down streets and very quickly. Okay, and it's good for our health, of course. So what I am saying is that I am more interested in how much green and what is the quality of this green in reality, as we can see here in this section, in this street view, than actually if, for example, this area here, I'm going to try to highlight, if this area here is not the case, but let's say that this would be a qualified, the land use, I mean, as public green area, for example, but actually you've got only two small portions of grass, and actually this grass is not is not in good condition and so on. No, I don't want this X square meters of green. I want the reality that is actually this. So what we do is using the Ndvi Index. Ndvi is short for, I would say, vegetation index of normalized difference. Okay. And this index allows us to estimate the quantity, quality, and development of the vegetation, and in a temporal series, because these are satellite images. So, well, basically, this is the aerial image, and I'm not going to go too technical now, okay? But basically, is the difference between the radiation that reflects the infrared band from the electromagnetic spectrum with the red band of the visible spectrum. So it's that we can see what we can see in these two images. But the output, what we are interested in, is this image here, that is the Ndvi, is the index. This is a raster, and each pixel, it has an index. This index is the Ndvi, something like this, okay? So I'm gonna go back to the previous image just to say that water, or I don't know, concrete, just a rooftop of concrete, as we can see somewhere, I guess, in here, for example, here, this red and this red means that there is nothing of vegetation, okay? So it's the lowest value, that is below 0. And the darker the green, the denser and higher quality are the vegetation in there, okay? So we can see that in here now. We've got, fortunately, we've got in Catalonia, the Cartographic Institute of Catalonia is great, and they've got open data, in this case, for an entire Ndvi for the whole region of Catalonia, and it's publicly accessible, so we can download it or use MS connection. And actually, there is even for QGIS, there is even a plugin to do that. So this is one example for a city we are doing the general plan right now. And what we do is to take the street network. We need to clean it up, of course. We need to get a great topology, let's say. And what we do is to offset the streets from facade to facade, and we do I'll say it, clip raster. Okay, we clip the raster with the, I don't remember exactly the geo process, but in QGIS is clipping. Yeah, I think it's clip raster or clip mask. From mask layer, right? Something like that. What we do basically is to clip the raster and to get the Ndvi only in the portions of the streets. So after that, we run an algorithm that basically what does is the weighted average of this index. So we give a value for each of these index divided by the area and divided by the entire area of each portion of the street, and we get something like this. So this is basically the index, the weighted average, okay, of each portion, not the entire street. Actually, we can see here the change between yellow and orange. Basically, we get an index for each portion of the street that says the green perception, okay? This is a calculation, but it's actually estimating the quality and quantity of greenness, of urban greenness, okay? The darker the green, the better quality, and the denser the green. We can see it in here, for example, taking this street as an example. We can see that here we've got some tree palms and perhaps some green over there, but it's basically a hardscape street. Here we've got better result, better outcome, and we can see that actually these trees are, you have more quality and more density of green. And also, this is very important to highlight it. And actually, we are going to see it better in this image. It's important to highlight that here we are counting also not only the public land, because what we saw in the previous slide of the number of square meters by inhabitant, normally this is public land. In this case, we are also counting, for example, we are offsetting when we've got facades of the buildings aligned to the street, is all right. But when we've got, for example, villas like that, like those, for example, that they have maybe a courtyard in here and they have trees and they are in private property, in private land, okay, but they have positive impact in the street. And actually you can perceive that green. So that green, even if it's those trees or these shrubs, for example, in the fence, this, even if it's in private land, it has a positive impact in the street. And it's actually cleaning up the air and helping to mitigate the heat island effect, right? So we are counting this, doing an offset from the center lines, and we are counting this green. So we are getting a better output in here, even if it's some of the green, it's in private land. So this is very important because we are not counting in a very static way numbers of public square meters of green, planned green, not real green. Perhaps it's a a square with 2 small portions of grass and a dry tree, and you are counting it as green area. No, in here we are trying to use the Ndvi, or we are using the Ndvi to try and estimate more precisely the density, the quantity, density, and quality of greenness. And we can do this in a temporal series because every 6 months or every year we've got new satellite images of those. So we can run the script again and we can get the urban greenness index. And of course, we can use different units of analysis, not only the streets, but we can do an average for neighborhoods or postcodes or districts or whatever. Okay. And the last case study that we use a lot as well in our projects is public transport accessibility, right? Because actually the key in cities is not mobility itself, it's accessibility, right? Access to different services. In this case, we are going to talk about mobility, about public transport. And again, going back to this image of the road structure networks, we are going to overlap now the public transport network, not the public transport. In this case, it's actually the metro system, okay, the tube, the subway, the metro system of Barcelona. We are going to try to identify the degree of accessibility to the tube in the entire city, right? So we can do that in different ways. Here, as we are using quite it's a big area. It's the entire, is even more than Barcelona. Barcelona municipalities like that, but we've got other municipalities from the metropolitan area. What we do here is, well, first of all, from each metro station, we do 3 different buffers. Okay, in this case, 200 meters, 400 meters, and 800 meters. That will be more or less 2-3 minutes, 5 minutes, and 10 minutes walking. Okay, the standard, the international standard normally is 1.33 meters per second in normal condition. A person with any problem of mobility in normal conditions, not in a huge slope or whatever. Okay, this is the standard. So it's more or less 400 meters equals 5 minutes walking in normal conditions. Okay, so we are basically here using 200 meters buffer that would be more or less 3 minutes walking, 400 meters 5 minutes, 800 meters 10 minutes to say, hey, Barcelona, actually the municipality, except of course the mountains and the industrial area and the airport, most of the city is very accessible to any metro station. Within 3, 5, even 10 minutes walking, you have access to a metro station. So crossing this with cadastral, I mean, this is very important, first of all, because you can see that almost everybody has access in 5 to 10 minutes walking to any metro station. Metro only, without counting tram, bus, train, or whatever, only metro, which is quite good. But actually, we can go even a little bit further and say, okay, let's cross, as I said before, with other data to extract useful information. So if we cross cadastral data in this case with the service area, with the buffers in this case, we can, well, in cadastral data here in Spain, we've got the number of, I'm going to zoom in a little bit because perhaps you cannot see it. We've got all buildings in Barcelona, well, actually in the entire metropolitan area, okay? All the different buildings, the single buildings. And in the attribute table, we've got the number of dwellings, so the housing units in each building. So that means that crossing this in QGIS with, well, you can do it, counts polygon, points in polygon, or spatial join using the attribute table. Okay, you can calculate how many housing units you've got within each of these buffers. So we've got, this is in Catalan, sorry, but this should be, this will be 293,000 housing units or dwellings within 200 meters from a metro station. Okay, so we can see actually how many, it's very precise, how many housing units we've got within these bands. Okay, if we go even a little bit beyond, I will say, I will show it later. We could do this with actually with isochron, so it will be even more detailed. Okay, but with this small video, I'm going to show this because it's very, very important. We work a lot with comparisons as well. Basically, because we need to know where we are and where we want to go. So it's important to have to establish a reference point. In this case, we are saying, hey, the Barcelona system, metro system, it covers only, I'm going to go back to the video again, just for you to see it, it's covering only 80% of, well, this is Barcelona, this is the entire metropolitan area, and the metro system is covering only the total amount, the 10 minutes walking, is covering only 18% of the entire metropolitan area, which is this 18% is actually the 60% of it is within Barcelona municipality limits. If we put on top of it at the same scale the London metro system, perhaps the comparison is unfair, I know, but what the point we are trying to make here is that if we are talking about the metropolitan city, for example, from the approach of the public transport, we must have a metropolitan public transport system. Otherwise, we are not talking about a real metropolis. So in the case of London, if we put it on top of Barcelona metropolitan area, we can see that actually with London, we would be covering 40% of the total area of the metropolitan area, and even some lines like the metropolitan line will go beyond the metropolitan area of Barcelona. We use this kind of comparisons a lot, actually, because it's very effective, actually, to communicate our ideas, comparing with other cases. This is similar map, it's almost the same. Here we are including as well train, tram, everything that it goes with rails, okay, railways. And we are comparing this at the same scale again, Barcelona and London. This is this kind of studies are very important. For example, I'm going to use a very easy example. If we are developing something, sorry, 1 second, I got my screen now. Okay, I think PowerPoint is frozen right now at PowerPoint. Yeah, sorry. If we are developing, for example, something here, a new development, I don't know, taking into account the same example I used before, that where I was showing the accessibility, the access to public transport. Let's say that we are doing a new development in there, and they are going to be living in a few years from now, I don't know, for example, 5,000 new people, new residents. So perhaps we need, I mean, we would see here more buildings, and we would see that these people are not covered by public transport. So we would say, hey, if you want to have accessibility or access to public transport, we need to put a new station in this line, for example. So this, as it happens in London or in Madrid or wherever, we've got different examples in here. This is London, Paris in here in the right-hand side, and Berlin, and putting some numbers behind it. So this is very important because we try to put some science behind our design using empirical cases, empirical examples. Okay, so even going a little bit further, we can say, if we've got census data, for example, we can estimate in each district or neighborhood or postcode how many people on average we've got in each housing, in each house, right, in each home. And then we can estimate the percentage of people with access, not dwellings, but people with access to public transport station. In this case, we are showing, as I said, all railway transport system within of people don't have access, working 15 or minutes or less to a public transport station. So this is very important for us to take decisions and also to demonstrate things that are not working right now. And then we need to, it's not only about growing, it's also about regenerating the existing city, right? And as I was, this is just to finish, as I was mentioning before, it would be more precise to do it through isochrones rather than buffers. Buffers are Euclidean distance, so this is the shortest distance between 2 points. In this case, isochrones are basically distances or walking times, in this case, 5, 10, and 15 minutes, the yellow one, walking times using or based on the real street network. You need to, this is more complex actually, because you need to topologically clean up the network a lot, and you need to have it very clean and very well drawn. But once you have that, using the service area toolbox in QGIS or plugins like PG Routing or QNeat, for example, you can do it the same process I did before, do it with isochrones, and it's more precise. In this case, we are talking about, now is very, we are talking a lot of people about the 15-minute city, well, looking at Barcelona from the public transport approach, or in this case, from in terms of public markets, these are the typical Spanish markets, in this case in Barcelona, we can see that Barcelona is not only a 15-minute city, that even would be a 10-minute city, right? Because most of the city is covered by a public market within a 10 minutes walking distance, right? So this is a step forward in the example I was showing. And just to finish, I'm going back again to this image where I was talking about flows. And this is basically to, I was saying before that flows often are enough to define the world, right? In this case, when I was doing this map, I didn't draw any land or sea line. Here we are only seeing air traffic, that is these lines, this blue, ship traffic, that is the whitish lines, and in this case are not flows, are networks, the railway network all over the world. And only with flows and networks, we can identify the US, the South America, Africa, Europe, Spain is here, the UK, and so on, only with flows and networks. I think this is quite, it's like metaphoric, right? But I want to do this statement basically because I wanted to make, to make the point that the world can be defined by the relationship between people and not by borders. Especially in this time, crazy times of madness and war and so on, I think it's quite good to remind that actually the world is defined not by borders are political, but by the relationship between people. And that's it. Thanks a lot. And if you got any question, please.
Yeah, please. That was great, Jose. Thank you so much for the presentation. That was really interesting.
Thank you. Thank you, Cliff.
We do have a bunch of questions, and if you have any questions, please just drop them in the Q&A section, and we will answer those. Just to start, so how much of your sort of daily work do you do within QGIS, and is that used throughout the organization, or is there sort of a mixed bag of software that's used?
Well, we use a lot of different software, especially in architecture. We use other software, but in the urban planning, design, and analytics areas, we use QGIS as the main software, and we use it for everything. Everything you saw, we use QGIS along with other GIS software plugins and web services and so on. But basically, we use it on a daily basis. Yeah, is the main software. And actually, we also with FME and so on, we use a lot of different automated processes and so on to make our lives a little bit easier, because otherwise we would be repeating all the processes every day. So yeah,
So I
we
guess
use it a
it's
lot.
pretty Python heavy at times too, right? You want to create scripts that you can run multiple
Yeah,
times.
exactly.
Yeah.
Not in my case, I don't write in Python, but we've got also people, programmers who do that for us. Yes.
Interesting. What about in terms of data sources? I'm not quite familiar with open data in Europe, but do most municipalities that you work with have a lot of open data, or do you have to rely on proprietary data when you're doing this type of work?
Mainly, we work with open data because, fortunately, well, the US, for example, has really, really great open data services in each county, I mean, the main cities. In Europe, depending on Switzerland, not Spain, but Catalonia has really good data as well. France, especially in Paris, the UK, London, they have really good open data services, and we rely mainly on open data, but also we use sometimes proprietary data that we, well, through in our research projects with academia, or buying data sometimes to private providers,
Right.
or even sometimes we produce our own data.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you too. Like when you're talking about the park, in terms of producing data, do you ever use things like GPS trackers and put them on bikes and let people bike around, or like is that ever something that you do to just collect the data that you need?
Yeah, sometimes we do that as well. And especially, for example, sometimes when we don't have data in Barcelona, we have a lot. But for example, if we go to a smaller municipality, a smaller town, you don't have, for example, car traffic flows. So we need to go there and start counting cars or counting people or whatever, and produce our own data. Yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's a combination of everything, but mainly our daily work is based on open data.
I did a webinar a little while ago on plugins in QGIS, and you mentioned that you use one for the NDVI analysis. Which one is that?
It is only specifically for Catalonia, because it's for this region. The name, I think, is called ICGC. That is the acronym for, in Catalan, Institut Cartogràfic and Geogràfic of Catalonia, right?
Yeah.
They've got a lot of aerial images, topographic images, and base maps, and also the NDVI. And
Really?
it's great because actually you can connect to any map as a web map service, or you can download the data if you want, of a portion or the entire region or wherever. And for the NDVI, we use only this service because it's great, and it's developed
you
for
don't even
QGIS.
need to so you don't even need to download the imagery yourself. You're just using it through the service.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great.
Because afterward in QGIS, I can clip the layer, the raster with clipping mask, and that's it. Yeah.
So in terms of the NDVI analysis, you're showing a lot. I really like the analysis that you did where you showed pretty much how green different streets were within the urban area. Do you guys ever do like change detection analysis on this to say, to look at how maybe a certain policy or a greening initiative has actually had an impact?
Yeah, exactly. That's the point of this analysis. We try to, first of all, to give evidence if something is not working, or if there is no coherence between what the urban planning codes say and the reality is, right? So normally we use this type of analysis to say, hey, this is not real, or we need to improve this. And this is the reality. This is what we have, and this is towards where we need to move on. Yeah.
Excellent. I think somebody raised their hands. You could just drop your questions right in the Q&A section, and we'll just answer them there. So if you just type them out there, it's usually best. It was actually, when you were looking at the mobility analysis, the first thing I thought, I'm like, oh, are you doing network analysis? And then you got to that eventually. I'm like, oh yes, you are, because that changed a lot. Now, I'm interested in the flip side of this. So that like the 10-minute city is interesting, the 15-minute city. But what about beyond that? So who lives in that area that's beyond that 10-15-minute buffer around, let's say, the subway areas? Do you ever do the reverse analysis? And then my second part of that is that, do you ever do sort of socioeconomic analysis of that and say, listen, there's a lot of poor people, let's just say, living beyond that 10-minute area? That's a problem. And how does that work?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was saying about crossing, the importance of these studies is crossing the different sources of data, because then is where you can identify patterns. For example, as you well said, not always, but normally, you can see if you cross this analysis, if we do the inverse and we highlight, actually the other day we did that. If we highlight the portion of area not covered by public transport, let's say in 15 minutes walking from any public transport station, and we cross it with the base demographic profile of people, you can see that normally is poorer people than the people who are living within this 15-minute band. So we crossed a lot, yes, with sensor data or with the statistics body services here in Spain or in Catalonia to actually highlight that, because there is, I was putting the example of if we are doing a new development in here, only talking about morphology, you can see that this is not covered by public transport, but actually it's not only what is covered and what is not covered, it's also who is behind the areas that are not covered. So then is where you analyze and see that is, for example, people in a condition of vulnerability. So you can create a map of urban vulnerability, for example, from different approach. And one of these approaches is accessibility or access to public services such as public transport, hospitals, schools, or wherever. We do this a lot, yes.
How do your clients respond to this when you obviously you're not sharing all the details of your analysis, but when you present the end result to them and say, listen, the idea you had of putting this here is actually not a good idea because of these reasons. Do they respond well to this? Are they ready to make a sort of data informed decision?
Well, of course, depending on the client, but the thing here is that there is no, we are trying to give this information in the most objective way as possible. That's the thing. It's not our opinion is that you should, I don't know, save this piece of land to build or to, you know, to give it away to give it up, no, to the public office, or you need to build I don't know, to build up a school or a public hospital. It's not our opinion. It's that we are demonstrating that you should do this, because otherwise public office is going to say, hey, you cannot do, I don't know, more dwellings or more housing units in here, because actually what is needed is a hospital, for example. So in this case, we use this type of this kind of studies to demonstrate that we basically are right. So it's not giving an opinion, it's showing that, I mean, it's an evidence-based case that you need to do this, otherwise this project is not going to move forward. So yeah, we do that a lot as well. But depending on the client, always, of course, there are clients who say, okay, so I'm not doing that, I'm doing nothing, and that's it.
Yeah, thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. Not quite often, I have to say, fortunately, but sometimes that happens. Yeah.
Excellent. I'll let you read Carlos's question in the Q&A, Jose.
Okay.
Because it's a good question, a little long. I'll just let you read it.
Well, let's say open this means, well, I can see only one question, right? That is Carlos. Okay, yeah. So storytelling is important. Yeah, those data that exist, but how do you deal with privatization of data? Those data that exist but are cultivated by other companies. That's a good question. And this is a personal opinion, but I think that most data, I'm not going to say all data, but most data should be publicly accessible, because it's, first of all, because we are producers. We all have a mobile device, a phone, an iWatch or wherever, and we are producing data, even if we don't want to produce specific kind of data, but we are producing. So that data should be open, because, I mean, first of all, because I think it's our right, but also because in the case of people who take decisions, let's say, again, public office or universities, researchers, or in my case, both in the professional and in the academic areas, we need this data to make better decisions for everybody. And when we need to pay for this data, to be honest, this is sometimes we cannot do it because we are not a huge company that can buy to, I don't know, I'm improvising that to Vodafone or to AT&T or wherever. We cannot buy a huge pack of data to make a small or a great decision. But anyway, we cannot do that in every project we are working on. So that's actually quite tricky. I have a strong stance in this case in favor of open data, and actually we've got, I think, increasingly more good open data services in several cities, not in every country, but in cities at least we've got good data. But there is also a lot of different data. I was thinking again, so for example, transactions, bank transactions, or how do you move, your daily commuting or wherever, that is normally not open unless you are doing a research, academic research, for example, and your university have access to this data, but you need to get an agreement with the private company. So at the end is anyway an agreement. So yeah, it's private data and shouldn't be. How I deal with that? Well, as best as I can, to be honest. That is actually a barrier. It's a strong barrier, yes.
Yeah, it's always a challenge, right? Because that cell data would be such a huge value for what you do, especially looking at. So I'm just thinking of parks, just knowing right away at this pinpoint in time, so many people are in this park and where they're located within the parks. It would be a fascinating data set to be able to work with. Well, we've come to the end of the time, so I just wanted to thank you, Jose. This was a really good talk. And
thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And just remind everyone that we're going to have all of these talks. All these talks end up on our YouTube channel. And everybody who signed up for this webinar, we'll be sending them a follow-up email soon. So once again, thanks, Jose. Thanks for sharing your really interesting insight into urban design and urban systems.
Thank you, Keith. My pleasure.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.